Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome down East by. Our panel this afternoon is Working Across Borders. I would like to introduce the panel moderator, Clementine, who will introduce herself and our panelists this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. It seems like we have a small and intimate audience, which I think we like because we're kind of a little bit shy. Are we shy, guys? Maybe not. But thank you so much for being here. I'm going to give the excellent panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves. But my name is Clementine Afana, and I am a travel writer, content creator, and a remote work coach. And I use WordPress and a lot of the cool things that all the WordPress developers, create and work on. So I come here as a user, but also as somebody who has worked remotely and worked with international teams. And so it made sense for us to be able to talk on this panel, which is about working across borders, working with international clients and with international team members. So I'm going to give the opportunity to my excellent panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Anthony.
Yeah, so I'm Anthony Moore. I'm the co-founder and CTO of True Knowledge. We're a Toronto-based agency specializing in WordPress development for large enterprises. So right now we are pretty much a hybrid / remote organization, and we do have a lot of clients internationally as well.
And what is one thing that people should absolutely know about you?
I don't know if anything is absolutely people need to know about me. I'm not too sure. I can't really think about that. I don't know. I'll pass on that.
Okay.
There's nothing that people need to know about me. I don't know. Maybe my life is boring or something. I don't know.
Okay, Anthony, we will take your word on that. Okay. Now, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Decote. I am the founder of podcastbranding.co. I'm a graphic and web designer, and it's an agency that specializes in creating visual identities, including logos, artworks, websites for podcasters. And I have clients around the globe, and I have a team of contractors from around the globe that I use to help me fulfill the work for my clients. And
anything people should absolutely know about you?
I got into podcasting in 2013 by starting to podcast about TV shows. So that was the thing. I'm a sci-fi nerd, and I picked a few sci-fi shows that I liked, and I started podcasting about them. And that's how I fell in love with podcasting, and I'm still doing it today. I have a podcast for graphic designers who are starting a business called Resourceful Designer. That's the podcast. And I teach designers how to start, run, and grow their design business. So
awesome. Maybe you would give us some recommendations of good sci-fi shows to binge on our way back to our different cities. Thank you, Mike. Mark, what about you, Mike?
My name is Mike Davey. I'm the senior editor at Delicious Brains and ACF for WP Engine.
And something that people should know about you? Something interesting?
In my spare time, I build doll houses for people who play miniature war games.
That's really interesting.
that is awesome.
That's awesome, yes. So I wanted to know, to kick off this panel, and you guys, we prepared some questions to really get the best out of our panelists. And at the end, if you have any questions about working with people across borders, we will invite you to ask those questions. So I'm curious to know from each one of you guys, maybe starting with Mike, when did you start? Do you work with international clients, or do you have an international team?
I definitely work with an international team. I've worked with international clients in the past, many, many years ago during my freelancing days.
Okay.
I'm primarily a writer and editor. I'm a content person rather than a developer or designer. Currently, there are only, in all of WP Engine, to the best of my knowledge, there are only 3 people employed by WP Engine who are Canadian, and one of them is actually here today, other than me.
Amazing.
So yeah, almost the entire team is distributed. And even back when I started with Delicious Brains, before it was purchased by WP Engine, even though it was a Canadian company, there were only, I think, 3 or 4 Canadians working at Delicious Brains, one of them being the owner, and none of them were in my area. The person I worked with closest actually was based in South Africa.
Wow. Wow, that's really far from here. And so what would you say have been the maybe 2 key benefits that you've experienced in working with people from across the border?
I would say the biggest benefit is simply getting perspectives that aren't your own. And you can get some perspectives that are really, really divergent, and they just might not be something you would have ever thought of, ever. And actually, if I can just take about a minute maybe, in a previous role, I wrote a blog that was about worst practice, the worst practice you could do as a maintenance planner and scheduler. And one of the points I included in there was chain your schedulers to their desks, right? And I liked that. The guy I was ghostwriting it for liked it. My immediate supervisor liked it. Our director of marketing, who's from South Carolina, didn't like that.
Okay.
Because to her, the word chains means one thing and one thing only. And that didn't occur to any of the rest of us. Like, I'm Canadian. My immediate supervisor is Canadian. The guy I was ghostwriting it for is from he's from the upstate New York. It never occurred to any of us. So we simply changed it to don't tie your planners to their desks. Right? And it doesn't raise any negative connotations that we didn't want raised. So.
That's really good that you bring that change in perspective that you can have from people who are not necessarily from the same culture and the same place as you are. What about you, Mark? Any key benefits that you've experienced with working with your contractors who are from all around the globe, and also with your international clients?
Well, with my contractors, I have some in the States, I have some in Australia, in Indonesia. Really, again, it's the perspective. And also, it does help, time zones. Some people say, well, it's really hard to work with somebody in a different time zone. I actually love working with people in opposite time zones from me, because I can assign a task to somebody, at the end of my work day, and when I come in the next morning, if I'm lucky, that task is done. So to me, I'm not losing any time at all, and neither are they, because when I'm assigning them the task, it's the beginning of their work day. So it's a very fluent workflow through that, and I love that. And as far as working with clients around the world, working with a client local or working with a client around the globe, it's really not that different. The one thing I did find is currency is an issue. So I decided when I started dealing with international clients that I'm going to charge everything in US dollars, because when you are dealing with Canadian dollars and you're dealing with somebody in Africa, they have no idea what to do. But as soon as you say US dollars, they know exactly how much it's costing them.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier. So that was one thing. Even though I'm a Canadian company, I charge in US dollars. So that was one lesson I learned about dealing with international clients.
That's a really great point, Mark. And Anthony, I saw you nodding to that. Do you share that experience as well, especially when it comes to charging?
Well, I think if you can charge in USD, definitely do it. So I'll share that sentiment with Mark for sure.
Okay. And any other key benefits, like for you, that you've had working with people across borders?
Yeah, so True Knowledge has been in business for about 15 years. So for the first 10 years, everyone was in Toronto, working in our Toronto office. But for the last 5 years, we really started to shift to more of a hybrid remote model, and now we have staff, in all over Canada, United States, South America, Europe, Asia. So, I really like that aspect, and I think one of the key benefits is just having access to the different talent pools and streams of individuals that each can kind of bring a unique perspective to a project that we're working on. A lot of our team members might have come from different agencies that deal with enterprise clients as well, and their perspective and the way they can kind of problem solve on a project, is super valuable. So that's like the team member side. From a client perspective, what I like most about working with international clients is more so the different verticals and industries we get to work in. So we have a lot of Canadian companies that are, airlines or banks, which can be fun. But then we also have educational clients in the United States or agriculture and animal genetics from South America or Europe. So just all these different types of verticals and learning about all of them, I find super interesting.
Oh, that seems like a very enriching experience, not just as a person who works with them, but also from even a personal perspective. And so the audience is definitely listening and hearing about you having those international clients that you work with and those international contractors. And I want us to zone in a little bit more on how do you find the people to join your team? How do you find the contractors from the contractors or the team members' point of view? And if you only deal with clients, how do you find clients internationally, or how do they find you? Who wants to take the first jab at this?
I guess.
Okay.
So, since my mic was already on. So how we find clients. So we work, we have a couple partnerships, one of them being WordPress VIP, one of them being WP Engine. So kind of through their partnership programs, we do a lot of co-selling and co-pitching, and they bring a lot of warm leads to us.
Okay.
So that's been a pretty good advantage for us. That's how we can kind of find some of our clients. We've also been in business for 15 years, so we've done a lot of projects. There's a lot of word of mouth out there as well, and if you do good work, then people will start
they
to
hear about you,
hear
yes.
about it. Yeah. So that is important for our team members and how we get team members. A lot of our team members are kind of referral from existing staff members. So they may know someone who is at a company, they're looking for a career change, and they know that they're very good at what they do, so they kind of approach us that way.
Okay.
And of course, we just advertise on sites like Indeed and whatnot for job postings, and we have a recruitment team that sifts through the applicants and goes through interview processes, technical challenges, etc. And
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a pretty thorough process, straightforward. What about you, Mark?
Well, for clients, I have a specific niche. I deal with podcasters, so I was able to build a website that's very SEO specific for that. So I get a lot of clients through my website. But there's a lot of podcasters out there that are podcasting about podcasting. Like their topic is how to create a podcast. And I've sponsored their shows.
Okay.
So by sponsoring their shows, they're talking to people who want to learn how to podcast, and then they talk about me that can offer this service. So I get a lot of clients that way.
Okay.
And a lot of it just attend conferences. I go where the podcasters are. I make sure people get to know me. So that's one thing. If you have a certain niche, go to wherever those people hang out. Because I have a saying that I say on my podcast all the time. It's not who you know that's going to get you ahead. It's who knows you.
Right.
So that's the big thing. As far as the people I work with, my team, I don't have any permanent members. It's all like contractors. That I'll hire somebody on a one-off basis, or I have people that I will call on if I need a certain thing. Like I've got web developers, I've got certain people that do certain types of coding, I've got illustrators, and most of them I find through freelance websites. Word of mouth is probably the biggest. I mean, if I need somebody in a specific thing, like that's why I come to WordCamp and that. I want to learn who programmers are, because if I need a programmer one day, I'd much rather hire somebody that I met, and that, or get a referral from somebody I met than going online. But worst case, I will go online to like freelance.com. There's TopTal,
Upwork, yes, Fiverr,
even Fiverr,
yes.
and I'll hire people from there. And it's just try to find the right person for the job.
Awesome. What about you, Mike?
I actually don't really have much to add on that one, but I will say that in my experience, that's the best way to do it, really, is you cast a wide net, you go where the people you're looking for are, and don't, if you've got blinders on, check to see if you've got blinders on about how you're doing your hiring and how you're prospecting for clients. Right, like examine your own thinking. Where are you looking now? If you're not finding what you want, maybe you're not looking in the right place. So you need to get those blinders off.
I like that. And I also like that the three of you guys mentioned, you made a really strong point, which is referrals and really going where it happens. And I think that's why it's so important for us to be at events like this, like WordCamp Canada, for the first time being nationwide, where you can actually meet your people, the people who are in different niches within the bigger theme, and you can see what they're doing, see who they're working with, and also connect with those people. So that word of mouth referral is really, really good. And yes, definitely be in the room where it happens. So I want to dive a little bit deeper. Let's say that you hire somebody, or maybe you connect with Anthony, and Anthony tells you that he works with this amazing developer from the Caribbean or from India, and he refers him to you, right? How would you, or maybe this podcast editor or this blog post editor, right? How do you have a vetting process for this person? And I would just love to know what your process is, because some people might feel like, if the person is not from Canada or is not from the US, where I actually know the word culture, it might be different for me to know, difficult for me to know how they work. So do you guys have personal or company vetting processes, or things that you look for or you look at when you start working with somebody, or when you are looking to hire that person, be it as a contractor or as a full-time employee?
Well, I know for me, whenever I'm looking for somebody, the one thing I want to do is I look at references.
Okay.
You know, just like when you're filling out a resume for a job, you add references. I contact references because if I'm hiring a programmer for something, I want to talk to people. I don't want to take the programmer's word for it that they did this project because, you know, they may embellish something. I want to talk to whoever they did the work for.
So you actually call them or
I
email them?
actually call them or email them
Okay.
because I want to find out. Now, I rarely will hire somebody I don't know for a big project.
Okay.
I'll hire somebody I don't know for a small
Smaller-
project, see how that goes.
Okay.
If that goes well, then I'll give them a bigger project.
Okay.
than that. You know, and so it's kind of like that. I want to see what they're capable of, and the best way to do that is talk to people they've worked with. Just like you would if you were hiring somebody and they gave you your resume and they have references, you know, you should call the references.
Okay.
So, and I've done that, and it's led me to hire people, and it's led me not to hire people
Oh,
after
wow.
talking. You know, sometimes they'll say they did a great. I love what they did, but they were difficult to work with, or I had to go back to them multiple times to explain what I wanted. But in the end, they gave me exactly what I wanted. Well, I don't know if I want to spend the time, you know, nurturing somebody that I have to keep on top of. So I'll move on to somebody else. So talking to references helps a lot.
Thank you for sharing that. What about you, Anthony?
Yeah, I think we do, you know, similar like reference checks, but for our recruitment, you know, style is you know, just speaking of like WordPress developers, for example, is typically we'll look at, you know, some of the code they might have written, their GitHub profile. Have they done anything to contribute to core? Have they put a WordPress plugin? Or looking at some of the agencies or companies they might have worked for, what was the types of projects they were working on? Were they large projects? You know, if so, what was their involvement in those projects? And, you know, when I get on a call, I feel like I'm a bad interview because my HR has all these questions. I don't do it. I'm very much just like, let's just have a conversation and see how we gel together and see if we can work together, you know, and stuff like that. So I think it's a lot about the work and vetting process, but then getting on a call and just like, what's the cultural fit, you know, and all that stuff. So that's
Good. Yes, I can definitely appreciate that. Mike, do you want to add something?
Well, I'm not involved in hiring these
Okay.
days, like in the process
used to.
at all with WP Engine, but I have been in a former life.
Okay.
And I would have to say that, yeah, you need to look at the work. You need to talk to those references to examine them, not just for how good their work is, but figure out why their work is as good as it is. Right? And I'm sure it does work in similar ways with development and graphic design. But when it comes to a piece of writing, you don't necessarily know if that piece of writing is as good as it is because the writer was really good, or because the editor was really good,
Yes,
or it was just
very
an
good.
excellent marriage of writer, topic,
Editor.
their interview subject just had fantastic quotes that they wrote down and emailed to them. Right? Like you need to dig in a bit and see what their process was and if that process is going to work for and with you.
I like that you guys give so many insights, and then again, the perspectives converge towards taking a chance on the people that you want to hire, but also doing your due diligence to make sure that who you get on board really matches what you are looking for. And I know when we were preparing for this panel, we were talking about some of the amazing experiences that we've had with working with people from around the world. And I wanted to know, do you guys want to share maybe some of the things that you learned from your team members or from your clients who are not necessarily from your culture and that you found surprising? For example, for me, I will start sharing that I work with some contractors from Brazil, and in one of the contractors, what happened is that she had a funeral to attend, and she told me the day before that she has a funeral to attend, and I was like, in my culture, when somebody dies, at least you give like 2 weeks before you bury the person because family needs to come and stuff like that. But she explained to me that actually in her culture, in that specific culture in Brazil, you know, they bury the people almost right away. So it was really surprising for me and something that I learned. But do you guys have anything that you learned from your team members, from your clients? It doesn't have to be funeral related, but anything.
I don't really have anything specific that I learned, but just in general, like learning more about people's cultures, learning more about Eid or Ramadan, and having our team members kind of share their experience with it, sharing photos or videos,
Yes.
Or Holy Festival, and kind of being involved in that, just like sharing all those videos is super fun for our team to kind of witness, and that's how we learn a bit more about each other's culture.
And do you wish them happy Eid?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
One thing that I did learn is, like, I want somebody that works with me that is going to question me. I don't want somebody that's just a yes person. And there's
great.
certain cultures that are just the way they're raised is to not to question authority. And since you are hiring them, you are an authority figure. And I don't want somebody to, if I say, if I hire somebody to code something, I'm not a coder. I expect them to know what to do. So when I hire them and I say, this is what I want, if they think there's a better way or what I'm doing is not, I'm not explaining it well, I want them to push back and say, have you thought of this? Or what about this? I don't want somebody that's just going to say, that's what you want, that's what I'm going to give you. And so dealing with certain places around the world, you got to let them know that, hey, I want the pushback. If I tell you to do something and that's not the right way, or you think of a better way, I want you to tell me, because if you don't give them that permission, they will give you exactly what you asked for, even if they know that's not the best thing for you, that there's a better option out there. So that's something I did learn. I learned it the hard way because I hired somebody to do something and they did exactly what I wanted, but it ended up not working right.
Wow.
And when I questioned them about that, they knew it wasn't going to work, but they said,
still-
but that's what you wanted. And so, and then speaking with other people, they said, yeah, there's, it depends on the culture. Some cultures are just, that's the
Very
way they're raised.
submissive,
You don't
yes.
question authority. You just do what they say. So that's something. If you're looking for somebody, give them the permission to question what you're doing and to
yes.
offer suggestions. And it just builds the relationship. By doing that, they trust you more, you trust them more, and you build what's hopefully a long-lasting relationship.
Definitely.
Something I've actually learned quite recently is if, for example, you're a Canadian who works with a U.S. company and most of your colleagues are from the U.S. So say, again, for example, you decide to schedule yourself to do really deep work on July 4th.
Oh.
The stuff that requires a lot of concentration, right? You don't want any interruptions. You don't want any requests. It's essential that you remember that some of your teammates are actually from the UK.
Oh, wow.
And they treat July 4th just like you do, so they may suddenly show up in your inbox
Yes.
with desperate needs that they really want fulfilled before the weekend.
Wow.
No, it's important to remember where all of your teammates are, not
Yes.
just most of them.
Yes, and I think that actually leads me to a very important question that also ties into productivity. How do you make sure that projects get completed, tasks get done, and communication remains open when you're working with people across different time zones? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, so for us, some of our projects are like 8 months to a year long, so it's definitely a long project life cycle. And for us, we just use your typical, like we use Jira for task management.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we just really, try to get our team to do is really just put as much information, leave as many comments as possible.
On the task update, yes.
Yeah, so in terms of productivity, what we want to do is ensure that, when you're starting your day, whatever time zone you are in, like you're totally unblocked to do what you need to do. What are your goals? Make sure you're unblocked to do them so that, things move at a pretty quick manner. And the fact that we have a project and we have multiple team members in different time zones working, what we're seeing is great velocity is like if we have a team member that's in Asia, for example, and they're several hours ahead of us, they've already done so much kind of tasks and moving
Yes.
things along the Jira board throughout
Yeah.
that day. And then when we wake up, it's like, oh, it's great. Look how much stuff was done. And now we'll take on the load and just
And
keep the
continue.
velocity going.
Yes.
So I definitely see some benefits of having these different team members and different time zones working on a project. And I think it just comes down to communication, open communication. We do like async stand-ups. So if you're on Slack, just write what you're doing that day, what you do yesterday, if you're blocked on anything, so we can unblock you. But then we also try to encourage, get on a Zoom call for a Scrum, or if you're
Updates.
blocked, or get on a Slack huddle. So really just as long as there's open communication, and team members know exactly what they're doing, they don't have access issues or can't connect to something, just really
Yes.
ensure that they're unblocked to be able to do the work
Okay.
that they need to do.
Okay. Super solid. What about you, Mike? Anything specific that you do to ensure that as well?
Actually, yes, and I finally found out what it's called earlier today.
Okay.
Because Aruba Ahmed's presentation earlier was about efficiently working as a developer across time zones. And one thing she mentioned is what she calls high definition communication.
Wow.
right? Which is asynchronous by default, but don't be afraid to go with synchronous communication when you need it. The more information you give someone, the better. The information has to be well written. It has to be properly organized, right? You can't, don't wander, but make sure you're giving them as much information as you can. Don't think this is too much information, because
Yes.
it will not be
Too much.
And then once you've got your messaging composed, give it a quick read. Right? Go back over it, read it again, see if there's any. I assume you don't know anything about it,
Yes.
and see if there's any way you can misinterpret those instructions.
Yes.
Be creative in the ways that you want to misinterpret those instructions. And very soon you will find you are, by default, giving unmistakable instructions.
Thank you for this very detailed explanation. Mark, I'm not sure if you shared on this. Not yet? Okay, go ahead.
For me, when I'm working with a team member, first of all, most of the people that I hire are through one of the platforms I mentioned earlier. And a lot of times when you first hire somebody, you have to communicate through that platform, whether it's Upwork or Fiverr or freelance.com, whatever. You have to communicate through that platform. So you do that, and I usually make sure that I give them enough time, especially if it's somebody I'm doing something for the first time with. I will make sure that I give them ample time to do. I'll give them a deadline, but the deadline I give them is not the same deadline that I actually require for my project. You know, I'll give them, I'll say I'll need it in whatever 4 days, but I actually need it 10 days
10
from
days,
now.
yes.
And that's just to see, first of all, if they can do it. But a lot of that communication. Now, the good thing about these platforms is if you find somebody you like, after I think it's like 2 or 3 times that you hire them, then you can actually start communicating with them outside the platform.
Outside the platform, yes.
So with my people that I go to regularly that I've built over the years, I use Slack or email. I mean, email still works today, you know. But I use Slack for my team, so I'll put them in there and I'll just communicate with them that way. The one thing, though, for communication is if I have somebody, especially my team, not so much if I hire somebody on Fiverr or that, but for my team members, I will get on a Zoom call.
Yes.
I will get on a Zoom call because you can misinterpret an email. The same thing with my clients. I design artwork for podcasters. I will not design something unless the podcaster agrees to get on a Zoom call with me. Okay, because I want to hear from them what their podcast is about because I'm designing stuff for their podcast. Not to mention, I want to hear their personality.
Yes.
I'm a designer, and if somebody comes on and they're quiet and subdued, I'm going to design something one way. But if they come on and they're energetic and loud and very mobile as they're talking, I'm going to design
know the
something
different
completely
vibe.
different for them.
Right,
So
right.
I insist with my clients that I have to meet with them on Zoom if I can't meet with them in person. And that has worked wonders for me. And clients love it because it makes them feel like, I really care. I'm taking the time to actually talk to them.
Yes.
I'm not just a questionnaire like some other designer who has a questionnaire they fill out and then wait for something.
Yes, I appreciate all these perspectives, and as you can see, guys, they have like 3 different business types, 3 different niches that still converge, and so many ways in which they have been able to build their teams and communicate with people to actually make sure that they remain efficient. For me, one of the things that I do based on what you shared, I definitely do Zoom calls with my team members that are located around the world. We have a Zoom call during the time when there's an overlap in our time zones, and for me, it's like even if we don't get to talk during the week, at least the Zoom call is for updates. And the detail, what you talked about, like having the task as detailed as possible, is so important because sometimes I will give them before I will give them a task and they will come back and be like, oh, but how do I do this? And I'm like, oh my God, I have to come back. And I come back after 3-4 emails and I'm like, okay, at this point, I should have just done the task myself. But then I understand that it's because I wasn't as detailed as I should have been. So I think even when we want to hire, whether it's within the country or across borders, it teaches us to be more detailed, more methodical, and to really think ahead so that we can better empower our teams to do the work that we need them to do, because then it's better value for us, right? All right, so you guys mentioned some of the amazing tools that you are using for communication, for collaboration, and so forth. And so far, I've heard Zoom, I've heard Slack, I've heard email, which is like undefeated. But do you guys have any other tools that you feel like, okay, I use this like every single day because I work with a team across borders? Are there any tools that are like your go-to all the time, apart from those 3 that we mentioned, like Slack, Zoom, and emails? Anything else?
I think one of the important tools that we use, because it is hard to get everyone on a call with whether it's your team plus the client, so it's hard to schedule this call where everyone needs to be in. So even just adding an AI note taker to your
yes.
meeting that people can't join, so it's automatically taking notes, it's automatically putting in the action items. Of course, you want to go back in
Yes.
and maybe vet them, but it's a very easy way where if some people can't join, there's automatically transcript. And we obviously encourage us or our team or the clients to record the meeting so it can just be sent over. So I think just like having the recording ability and kind of the note taking ability for us is a very important tool.
Do you ask them to come on meetings with their camera on or off?
We're kind of flexible. I feel like if it's a first meeting with a client and we want to see everyone, it's nice to see everyone's face. But if it's like a regular
Meeting.
team scrum, it's like I don't need to see everyone's face every day, I guess. But
Yeah, that's usually funny. Like sometimes I'm like, I know that they probably just got out of bed, and I'm like, camera on, camera on. I want to see you in your getting out of bed face. But like, it's when we are cool and we know, like, you know what, it's just us. What about you, Mark? Any go-to tools?
A scheduling tool just for scheduling meetings, especially with clients, but also with my team. I do record anytime I meet with a team member or with a client. Before when I send them the link, I say right in there, I will be recording this meeting in case I have to refer back to it, so they have permission. It's funny, before the pandemic, it was about 50-50 whether they'd turn on their camera. After the pandemic, I'd say I get 1 out of 100 who don't want the camera on.
Okay.
Everybody's okay with the camera
Yes,
now.
they're comfortable, yeah.
They got comfortable during the pandemic. I mean, they didn't have a choice. Other than that, I mean, Dropbox. I mean,
File sharing?
Sharing. I use Dropbox to share stuff. Those are kind of the main tools. I mean,
okay.
there's a bunch of tools that you use, but they're for specific
Big
things.
tasks,
But the
okay.
ones you use on a regular basis, I would say a scheduling tool, whichever one. There's 100 of them out there.
Yes.
And that, and of course, a calendar. That you connect your scheduling tool to. So.
Great. What about you, Mike?
One of the most vital tools to my workflow is probably also one of the simplest, and it's probably one that's everybody here uses in some capacity. And that's just Google Docs with
wow.
suggestions showing.
Wow.
Because I've been doing this
Yes.
long enough that we didn't used to have that. We used to have to use Word and
Yes.
email each other files back and forth. And I used to ask people, if you're gonna please look this over. Because most of the writing I did was business to business writing. Even back when I was in the magazine field, it was mostly business to business writing. So I would write a lot of business profiles, right? And I didn't write what they ordered. But it was supposed to be a profile about how good this person was at their business. So I wanted them to be comfortable with it. I wanted them to be happy with it, and I didn't want to put words in their mouth. So I used to show it to them. And I used to have to ask them, go ahead and make any changes you like suggest any changes you like, but make sure you use red text.
Yes.
So I can figure out what's changed.
Right.
Without running a full diff on it. And sometimes they wouldn't, and then I'd have to read over the entire thing to find out.
To try to figure out.
Okay,
what
yeah,
it
I'm
is.
sorry, that's not a word. We're taking that out. No. I'm sure you mean that, but you probably don't realize exactly what it is you're saying there. It sounds really terrible, so I'm going to soften that up a bit.
Yes.
But yeah, so sorry to kind of wander off the path there. Google Docs with the changes show.
I like that. And you guys are sharing so many tips and so many strategies and so many tools. Just a reminder, guys, these sessions are recorded and you're going to be able to access them, to go back to them, to take notes on what they shared, and to really add those tools to your arsenal. Now, I have so many other questions for them, but I wanted to ask you guys, do you have any questions that you want to ask the panelists? Any questions on working across borders, on hiring, on making sure that your team is productive, or making sure that they come to work, or things like that? Yes, we have one over there. I'm not sure if you have a mic. Okay.
Hey, I was just curious on the perceived hiring internationally as a way to arbitrage or reduce costs. Has it ever cost any businesses, or have any businesses come to you and been like, we really just want an onshore team? And has that ever been an issue? Thank you.
That's a good question. For us, we don't really look at it as a cost saving, and we pay everyone equally, whether you're located in Canada or wherever. We'll pay you what we would pay as if you were like a Canadian citizen. So we don't necessarily look for discounted rates or anything like that. So that's how we kind of approach that. But I think it is easy for companies to kind of get sucked into that thinking, but that's not something that we do.
I do look at that. I know when I'm hiring somebody, like if I'm charging something to my clients, yes, I'm going to upcharge whatever I'm billed, but I make more money if I can pay somebody, $50 an hour, or in some places, depending on where you hire them, you can hire them for $10 an hour. You make a lot more money if you do that. It's part of the game. Now, your question was, has there ever been any pushback? My clients don't know where my team is. I've got a team. That's my business. That's not their business. My team, I only have one team member, and that's my main developer that I use. He's the only person that I've ever let talk to a client. I'm the person who talks to the client. So they don't have to know that the illustrator I hired is in Indonesia. That doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter that the illustration they did, I paid her $50 for it, and I'm charging them $300 for the illustration. That doesn't matter to my client. As long as they're happy with the thing and they agree to the price that I gave them up front, I make more money on it. And my developer is in the U.S., so I'm paying him U.S. prices, but that's because he's worth it. I trust him. He's the type of guy that when I come here, I hand the keys over to him, so he's worth that money. But most of the time, and it's looking for the best person. When you look on Upwork,
Yes.
I look, and to me, it doesn't matter. I look at the resume, I look at what they're capable of, and then I'll look at what they charge and decide there, is it worth hiring somebody, local from Canada or the U.S. or that, or do I want to hire somebody from somewhere else in the world that's going to be less expensive?
And still give you the same quality of work.
Yeah.
Yes.
And honestly, if it comes between two candidates, I'll choose the one that's less expensive. If there's two equally good and I can't decide, I'll choose the one that's less expensive because I know it's going to put more money in my pocket. And at the end of the day, I'm running a business. So,
Very fair point. Yes. Mike, do you want to add something to that, or no?
Nope, not
Okay.
really. No.
All right. Any other questions, guys? Yes.
Hi. It's not really a question, and we came in a bit late, so I'm not sure if you talked about it or not, but I did hear a little bit about etiquette in terms of cultural differences when you're working. I just wanted to recommend a great book that I read called The Culture Map by Aaron Myers, and some of you may or may not know it, but it's a fantastic reference for working with people across different cultures and work ethics. So I thought I'd just throw that in there. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So it's The Culture Map by Aaron Myers. Thank you so much. We're repeating it so that it can be in the recording, so when you go and watch back that recording, we can have that. Thank you for the suggestions. Have you guys read the book?
No, I haven't read the book, but it brings up a good point. Like we talk a lot about tools and whatnot, but I think what's like most, one of the most important things to look at your organization is like your diversity and inclusion policies and
Yes.
and what are you training your management or leadership teams on some of these best practices and how you deal with maybe conflicts that might arise. What type of training in that area are you providing your team so that they're well equipped to kind of handle these situations? And then when you're hiring people from different countries and et cetera, that they're kind of coming into a welcomed environment, they're set up for success. So aside from all the tools that we've been talking about, I think that's probably one of the more important aspects of this.
one thing I just want to touch on is it's harder now to hire somebody internationally. Like one of the things that I've always done is I wanted to make sure that they spoke English, that they spoke English well, because I'm going to be communicating them in English. I want to make sure that they understand what I'm saying, and I want to understand what they're saying. And it used to be a lot easier to be able to tell that whenever you'd go on to any of these platforms and read something. But now with AI, they can write something in their language or write something very poorly in English and have AI write it very well. So it is much harder, so you've got to do your due diligence now if that's an issue for you. I know it is for me. I want to make sure that the person is not necessarily a native English speaker, but somebody who understands English enough and can communicate in English enough, because that's the way I'm going to work. So you got to be careful now since AI, because you never know.
Thank you for that, Mark. Do you guys have any other questions about hiring internationally, working across borders, expanding your workforce to the bigger world or the bigger globe, and hiring the best talent to join your team? Anything? Oh, they've covered everything that you guys wanted to know.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.
That
So
was-
before, are we out of time?
No, we've got a few more minutes.
Okay.
About 10 minutes left.
About 10 minutes left. Okay, so I wanted to then, unless there's a question, and you guys can interrupt us if you have any question, I wanted to just ask the panelists to wrap up. What would you, I want to wrap up on with two things. First, what do you think the future of hiring across border is? Do you think that with the quality of talent that we're getting from people from around the world and with everything that's happening, do you feel like it's going to continue and you're going to continue hiring across border? And secondly, what would you recommend to somebody in your shoes who is thinking, you know what, I really want to hire somebody from a different country, but I'm a little bit skeptical? So that's two loaded questions for you guys, but
Yeah, I
know
think
you
we'll
have a
kind
lot
of
of
keep
insights.
going in a trend where you can hire someone from anywhere. At least for us, anyways. Yeah, I think it's a positive trend. What I would suggest for anyone, it kind of always comes back to, like I said, the make sure your company is set up. Like, how are you going to get people equipment if that's what you're offering? If you're supplying your team members laptops, how are you going to get them a laptop or reimburse them, et cetera? So really just look at your policies and how you're going to set yourself up for success in that way. So it's really more policy driven and procedure driven that I'm thinking. Yeah.
Okay, so set up your procedures and your policies to make sure that you cater for the people you want to hire.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things that you may not think of. How are you going to pay people? If you may offer, your Canadian employees benefits, like how do you, if you can't offer your international employees certain benefits, like how can you offset some of those costs? So it's like really just thinking about how you can really think about your policies and procedures for that type of situation.
Yes. And this is something that you can also do. You can do one at a time, trial and error, see what works, see what doesn't, and really experiment with that.
Yeah, and I think just having like the access to a diverse talent pool and stream is super important, and all those different experiences that people have, and it's hard to find that just in one geographic location.
Definitely, I agree. It's very enriching for the person who is hiring and for the company as well.
Yeah. I think just as a Canadian, we're a very diverse country anyways in our everyday lives, so it's an easy transition for that to be applied to your business as well, I think.
Excellent. Mike?
I think actually the barriers we've seen fall are going to continue to fall.
Okay.
And international collaboration is going to grow probably by leaps and bounds over the next 5 to 10 years. I really don't think we've seen much yet,
Wow.
like compared to what we're going to see. Two reasons for that. One of them is virtual reality is eventually going to get here. Meta keeps making big bets on it and keeps failing, but one of these days, someone's going to get it right. Right? And whether you're in the same room with someone or not just won't matter as much anymore. And germane to something Mark said about how you can now use AI to write yourself an English cover letter or an English resume, so you can't necessarily tell if their English is that good. I predict that eventually that's just not going to matter, because the AI, the LLMs we're using will become so good that if someone speaks only Urdu and I speak only English, the AI will bridge that gap for us. And it's going to create some hilarious misunderstandings at first.
That would be fun to laugh at during the team meeting. So,
Right?
yes.
It's like, he wants me to kill a goat? What? That doesn't... that must be some kind of... But eventually they'll understand, that's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a cultural metaphor. What he means is he wants it done quickly.
Yes.
Right, in time for dinner or something. But those tools, as they evolve, will continue to lower those barriers for all of us.
And any advice for anyone who is thinking about hiring internationally? What's one piece of advice you will give them? Or, maybe seeking clients internationally?
Just do your best to get to know them
Okay.
as well as you possibly can. The same kind of advice I'd say for getting a client here or hiring anyone here is
Okay.
do the best you can to get to know them.
Thank you, Mike. Yes.
Question. When you hire internationally, do you go to a platform, or exactly how do you hire those people? It's just, I'm just thinking because I do came from a Latin American background, and I do know a lot of people that would love to work with companies in Canada. So how can I recommend how to get hired by companies that will need their services?
Well, to me, when I hire somebody, my first thing I do is I go to Upwork, I'll go to Fiverr, I go to TopTal, or I go to freelance.com. Those are the kind of the four that I'll go to, that I'll look through. So if somebody wants to be hired, they should be on all of those platforms. I mean, you can't just, you don't have to be on just one, you can be on all of them. But yeah, and the thing is, you can limit your search. So, you know, you said you're from Latin America. You know, I could do a search and say, I want to hire somebody specifically from, you know, Latin America. Or, you know, oftentimes, I'll say, I often look, depending on what it is, for programmers and that, I'll look in the Philippines because they got really good people there and they speak really good English. So, and they're also a lot less expensive. So I will filter my search and say, I want to search for somebody in the Philippines. Now that is for specific things. If I'm looking for an illustrator, I don't care if their English is good, as long as they can, you know, they can draw well and they can understand my instructions. So there's, you know, they need to be on all those platforms if they're looking, and there's many more. Those are the four I use. There's many more. The more platforms they're on, the better chance that they'll find work. So now the one thing I do want to state is, if you haven't hired somebody yet, you haven't hired a team, the hardest hire is your very first one.
Yes.
It's the scariest one. You need to get by that person. The first person I ever hired was a virtual assistant that I needed to do some research for something, and I hired a virtual assistant to do that research for me. It was a one-off job, and I can tell you, I was nervous to hire that person, because to me, my business was me. You know, if somebody hired me, I had to do the work. And it took a long time of running my business before somebody finally knocked me on the head and said, Mark, you're running a business, and that business, you know, as long as you satisfy the client's needs, then you've done your job. And if that means you have to hire somebody else to help fulfill those needs, then that's part of running a business. So I hired that virtual assistant first. Then I hired somebody. I had an issue with a website that I didn't know what to do with. I couldn't figure it out. I hired somebody to fix the problem, and they fixed the problem. It took them a couple of hours to do what would have taken me 10 to 20 hours to do, just poking around. And then that's when it really hit me that, you know, this is not as hard as it sounds to hire somebody. And now I do it on a regular basis. If there's something that I can't do, no problem. A client asks me for something I can't do, I don't tell the client, you know, I can't do it. I just, no problem. In my mind, I'll hire somebody to do it.
Yes.
You know, or if it's something I don't want to do, maybe it's something I can do, but I don't want to do it. Hire somebody.
Yeah.
My time is better off spent doing something I want to do, and my business will grow that much faster. I mean, I started this particular business, Podcast Branding, just 5 years ago, and it surpassed the other business that I'd been running for 15 years. That other business is still around, but I don't even worry about it anymore, because Podcast Branding has taken over my life because I've hired people to help me do the stuff that I can't do or I don't want to do. So if you have not done that, the first one is the hardest, but once you get past that, you'll realize how much hiring people, whether it's local, you know, international, whatever, it doesn't matter where it is. When you learn that you can hire people to help you, wow, what a difference it makes.
Yes. I think if we could, we would have stayed there for overtime, but our moderator, our coordinator told us that we are just
Perfect.
wrapped up.
You
Perfect
guys
timing.
are perfect.
Yes, so thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience, for all your questions. You can chat with us. You know, I think we have 10 minutes before the next session. You can chat with us, ask us more questions that you have about hiring. And this session is going to be recorded, so you can definitely go back to it as well and contact us if you have additional questions. So thank you so much, you guys. You were amazing, and thank you for having us.
Thank you ever so much for all the valuable information. I know I took some great takeaways there. It was lovely to hear. Thank you again.